All right, hey everyone, welcome. Got a really special activity for you here. We have an AMA with Jon Gottfried, one of the co-founders of MLH. So as the stream goes on, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. And yeah, Jon will start by introducing himself. Jon, just want to make sure, is your mic on?
Now it is. Hello, everyone. As Zane said, I'm John. Swift and I started MLH about 10 years ago now, which is an incredible amount of time. I honestly find it very surreal that that much time has passed, but I'm so excited to be here with all of you at Global Hack Week to talk about what that journey has been like.
Awesome, awesome. So I guess a question we can start off with is, how did you and Swift first meet?
So before MLH, both Swift and I had worked as developer evangelists. So I was at this company Twilio, and he was at this company SendGrid. Now they're actually the same company. Twilio bought SendGrid recently, but at the time they were separate. And we had both been living in New York, working as remote employees for these companies whose headquarters were elsewhere. And so we kind of became like de facto coworkers. We didn't really have a lot of other coworkers in the city, and we worked out of the same co-working space and went to a lot of the same hackathons and conferences and meetups together. And so we just kind of became friends over time by working together and hanging out together a lot. And that evolved into a relationship where we wanted to start a company together.
Awesome. Going into that, how did you go from just like the idea of MLH into making it like a real company?
Yeah. So effectively, what happened is Swift quit his full time job a little before I did, and while he was in this like kind of transition period of figuring out what he wanted to do next, a friend of his recommended to him that he sort of turned his passion for student hackathons, where he had been traveling around helping out a lot of organizers to run their events, to try and turn it into a more formal thing and link all of these events together because there was a lot of energy and a lot of excitement. And at the time, there were not that many events. We're talking 5 or 10 events a year, but a friend had suggested to him that he formalize it a little bit. And I had actually registered the domain name Major League Hacking many years before for a totally unrelated project. And so Swift came to me and was like, "Hey, can I use the name?" And I told him yes. And he started, ranking the different schools that participated in these events and traveling around to help make sure they ran smoothly. Um, that was kind of what the first like 4 to 6 months of MLH looked like, was mostly just Swift going around. And at the time we were roommates, so we would talk about it a lot and work together on different aspects of it. But really, it was him traveling around different events. Um, the way it kind of became a more sustainable business and organization is, the first thing we did was go to all of our friends who worked as developer evangelists to kind of just like ask them to sponsor what we were doing. And then when I came on board, I started, kind of formalizing our sponsorship model and bringing on larger companies. So I helped Swift get our first domain sponsor. And then in that first year of MLH, I brought on Dell as our flagship sponsor and started kind of growing what we were doing from there. But it was very organic, and we were kind of figuring it out as we went.
Yeah, kind of like a hackathon in and of itself.
Yeah, honestly, the process of starting an early stage company is surprisingly similar to a hackathon in a lot of ways. A lot of late nights, a lot of breaking things, but it's fun.
Yeah. Speaking of that, could you share what your first hackathon was like, and if there's anything like similar you see about hackathons today or anything that's different?
Yeah, so I actually have a history degree. I started out studying computer science, and kind of found that I didn't really enjoy a lot of the academic theory as much as I enjoyed building stuff, which I think is a relatable feeling for a lot of hackers. And so I switched majors from computer science to history, um, with the hope of becoming a high school history teacher. Uh, One of those semesters while I was in college studying history, I got sick and had to take a semester off. And I was back home in my hometown, which is like a random suburban town in New York, not in the city. Um, and once I started feeling better, I was like bored out of my mind because all of my friends were away at school. And so I went on Craigslist and started applying for random programming jobs. And it turned out that there was this like new ed tech startup a block from my parents' house, which was weird for a lot of reasons. It was probably the only startup in like 100-mile radius. But I applied for this job. It was doing PHP programming, and I got it part time. And all of the people who worked there, it's like ragtag band of weird developers. Like one of them was a college dropout. The other one was like a musician who was programming to like fund his music. And it was like really weird group of like interesting people. And my boss there at the time, this guy who's also named John, ironically, um, started inviting me to all of these new tech events going on in New York City, which was like an hour away. Uh, and one of the events that he helped organize and invited me to was this event called Music Hack Day, um, which was a super unique event. I don't know if it exists anymore, but it was basically a weekend long hackathon where programmers, designers, musicians all came together to build technology powered music projects. And that was my first hackathon. Uh, and it totally blew my mind. Like, my project was janky, it didn't work right. But part of the process was that at that time, every single participant at the hackathon got on stage to demo to everyone else. There was no science fair. And so I got up and demoed this like half working project, and I was like super sleep deprived. But all of these people came up to me and were like, "Hey, that's cool. Like, what feature are you adding next? Can I help with it?" Like, wow, I had a similar idea. And getting that kind of like support and validation, and also like meeting all of these people with so many different backgrounds and interests and passions, like it totally hooked me. And after that, I was going to hackathons all the time. I was like in 110%. And that's directly what set me on the path to MLH.
Yeah, I think I definitely relate to that. I think kind of support and I guess affirmation received in the MLH community is something that's you don't see a lot elsewhere in tech. So I think that's really valuable.
You don't see it a lot as a student either, to be honest.
Hmm. So kind of related to that, what would you say is one of your favorite memories from like the early days of MLH?
So I think in a lot of ways, hackathons are really similar to how they were. Like they maintain the spirit and the energy and like the passion. Um, One thing that's different is the maturity of MLH's own operations. So in the early days of MLH, when we would go to an event, Swift and I and other folks on the team, it was like we were half developer evangelists and half warehouse workers. So we spent a lot of time at those early events unpacking and repacking boxes, dealing with freight shipping, uh, setting up like random displays and like tables and stuff at hackathons, like doing all of this crazy stuff that like thankfully we figured out a better way for now. But like a lot of my early memories are like the MLH team and the organizers hanging out together in a pile of boxes, just like trying to get stuff ready for a hackathon. Um, and that, is not like the most enjoyable experience objectively, but it was really fun. Like we were all hanging out, sharing this weird kind of like experience and trying to create something for a group of people that would be really special. And I have really fond memories of those days, even though I'm glad I don't have to like, pack 100 boxes all the time anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely an improvement over time. Um, so going from that to getting the first partner to sign up to support hackathons, do you
Yeah.
remember how that went? How you felt?
So, I mean, we had a couple of small partners. Dell was our first big partner, and it was it was a little scary. Like, I remember having this conversation with Swift at one point where we were like, either this is going to go really well and they're going to love us, or they're going to be really upset and they're going to sue us out of existence. And thankfully, they loved us and it went really well. But like it, when you like are a tiny team of like two or three people and you sign a contract with this like big company, you don't really know what to expect, right? Like you don't know how that relationship's going to play out. You don't know what the people are going to be like. And it ended up being a really strong, like collaborative relationship. But like I was definitely a little scared. Um, but it unlocked so much stuff for us. Like that sponsorship from Dell enabled us to support a lot more hackathons. It enabled us to, start doing things like swag and prizes and you know everything that is kind of like core to how MLH operates these days started with that. And obviously it's improved over time and changed over time, but like that was really the first big unlock that allowed us to grow and start doing a lot of creative new things.
Awesome. Yeah. I remember going to VTX myself. I was definitely nervous getting the first like big sponsors and going through that process.
Yeah.
All right. I have some questions coming in from the audience now. All right. So one person's question is, what are some of the best things that I could do to get selected for the MLH fellowship?
Yeah, great question. So, every cohort, right, which is basically every 4 months, we run an admissions process, and we have to look at a lot of different factors, right? Like, do your technical skills match the projects we have available? Do you have good communication abilities? Like, are you going to be successful in the program based on your, where you're at in your kind of learning journey? And so it's not like there's any one thing that will make you get accepted. It really is kind of a multifaceted approach, and like there have been a lot of people where like one cohort they don't get accepted because we don't have a project that matches their skill set, and then the next one we do. And so I'd always encourage people to keep applying and keep trying because like the projects change every cohort, and we are looking for different skills every time. And I think just make sure you know your fundamentals and have an area that you're interested in.
Yeah. One of the best things I would say that people can do to prepare is just attending more hackathons
Yep,
because it teaches
that's a
you
good
more
one.
skills than it teaches you more skills than just the technical stuff. It teaches you how to work well within a team, which is what you're going to have to do when you're into a cohort
Yeah,
and um creating these different ideas. Yeah, I'd say that's a good way of preparing.
yeah, I agree.
We have another question. They say, I'm 26, no background to software engineering, but I want to build products. Is this a naive dream? Where should I start? And
I,
how long do you think it'll take to be comfortable with software development?
I don't think it's naive. I think it's very achievable. So I would start with free online resources. There's a ton of free resources. I'm a huge fan of this online textbook called Learn Python the Hard Way. They also
Hmm.
have one called Learn Ruby the Hard Way, and I think they have a couple other languages too. It's really well written and it's project based. Once you learn some of the basics, I always encourage people to like go to a hackathon because one of the most important skills when you're learning to code is to take all of these concepts, right? Like what is a function, what's a variable, and to translate that into a actual solution to a problem. And hackathons are one of the best environments to do that in because not only is it like a dedicated time and space away from your day to day, but there's also people there who can help you and help you figure out problems that you're facing. And so that's kind of the path I recommend. It's like learn some of the basics and then immediately go to a hackathon and try and build something. Um, in terms of how long it takes to be comfortable, I mean, like, there's always more you can learn. There's never like an end state. Like I've been programming for, I don't know, 25 years, and I still don't know a lot of stuff. Um, so I would say, it's a continuous learning experience.
Yeah, I definitely second looking into one path on the hard way. That's something I started out with as well.
Yeah,
There's
great
a lot of
book.
really good resources out there, and hackathons especially. I find that again they don't just teach you, you know, they teach you how to implement those I guess theoretical aspects that you learn, but they also teach you about how to build products
Yeah,
and in terms of thinking of a product, actually creating a prototype and thinking of something that I guess learning that what you want to do. So, I mean, for example, I've started out with app development and game development, but now I'm working on data science and AI. So, interests constantly change, and the only way you kind of learn where you want to find your niche is by exploring.
yeah, definitely.
The one person asks, was free shipping always a thing, and where did that idea come from? So by that they mean taxes and everything included, rather than just sending it by the post and having the participant deal with that.
Um, I think there are still situations where customs varies quite a bit from country to country. Um, we mostly started shipping things during the pandemic, to be totally honest. Like before that, most of our shipments went to in bulk to hackathons to be distributed to people. But obviously, since events were only virtual for a couple of years, we started doing individual shipping. But it's still something we're figuring out. Like it changes quite a bit from year to year.
Yeah. White Codes asks, what are your thoughts on the current tech recessions? And do you have any career tips for students who are graduating this year?
Yeah. So in an environment like this, I don't believe that there are no open positions. There's a lot of people hiring. They just may not be the companies that you immediately think of, right? So the big companies that have laid off a lot of people, they might be experiencing a downturn. But if you go to like a healthcare company or a bank or whatever else, like every company uses technology these days, and every company has developers, and a lot of them are hiring like crazy and not facing the same kind of recessionary like forces. And so my recommendation is to like think outside the box a little bit in terms of where you want to go work. A lot of these companies, like we partner with Capital One, for example, like have incredible engineering culture, but you just don't think of them like a lot of the times, as the immediate first choice. But like it's a great place to work, and you learn a lot, and you learn a lot of similar things than you would at a Google. But you just have to kind of look a little bit outside of the tech sphere for those types of engineering roles. They still exist.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've done a lot of work at General Mills, and I like I don't always do stuff within tech. I do stuff with food and things like that. So it's also
Yep.
just to find what you personally like in a company.
Yep.
And then someone else asks, do you feel like there's still something missing in hackathons? And if yes, what is it?
Something missing. Um, so there's kind of two things that immediately come to mind. The first is that I still think hackathons can do more to get people from other disciplines participating. Like some of my favorite hackathons I've ever been to, like that event Music Hack Day, had a lot of people who were not programmers, collaborating at them, right? Like there were people at that event who was like, hey, like I'm a guitar player, and that was their contribution to the event. I think hackathons can have, similar like collaborations between different majors, different interests, different skill sets. Like I've seen some events out there where they bring in doctors to work with programmers on interesting projects around the healthcare space. Um, and so I always encourage organizers to think about like how do you bring in a variety of skill sets and interests and passions to make this hackathon really unique. Um, The second thing that I think is, I don't know if I would say it's like missing, but it's something I would like to see return. Um, in the first handful of years of MLH, a lot of schools organized buses to go from campus to campus. And after the pandemic, I've seen less of that. But I think it's one of the ways that you can make hackathons really accessible and also like, build more inter-campus like collaboration. And so I do think that like there are interesting and clever ways to get those kinds of transportation networks set up. And a lot of times schools already have budget for it. They already have buses sometimes. And so it's something that I would like to see people doing more of again.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with both of those, but especially the latter point, because for me personally, like the first time I left Virginia Tech to go to another university, um, was via one of those buses to Hack
Yeah,
Duke. I remember, and I met like people that I would have never met otherwise, and I still have some people who are like lifelong friends. So I
yep,
definitely agree that that's like a very important experience.
absolutely.
Someone says, firstly, it's amazing to see you. But they wanted to ask why so many job posts nowadays require experience for entry level jobs. Like they require 3 to 5 years of experience. And do you have any advice to overcome that?
I'm laughing because it's
Fun
like such
question.
a silly requirement. Like, why would you put that on an entry level job posting? I think a lot of times the there is a disconnect between what an engineering manager actually wants from a candidate and what their recruiting team puts on the job posting, um, which sucks and it's difficult to circumvent. But like the way that you circumvent that is by building more personal relationships with the people at the company through things like hackathons or career fairs or info sessions or even just like cold emailing them. Most requirements, especially for entry level jobs, are like more flexible than you would expect. Um, and a lot of times, like, you can even get around them by like showing comparable experience. Like, okay, they want 3 years of experience. Obviously, it's not realistic, but if you can say, hey, like, I've been doing all this project work, have done open source work. I believe that makes my level of experience comparable to someone who's been around for a year or two. Like a lot of companies will consider that seriously, and I think you just need to surface it for them. But
Yeah,
hopefully people don't. I would like to see that trend stop. I think it's a stupid way of designing job recs.
yeah, I think I agree with that. I guess sort of a tangential question I have is that I've seen a lot of students who are interested in pursuing like boot camps and other certifications as compared to say a college degree. Do you have any advice for um, people looking for entry level positions without degrees in the traditional sense?
Um, you learn very different things in a boot camp than you would in a computer science degree program. Um, but regardless of which path you pursue, you still need extracurricular work to show what you know. So if you go to a boot camp or if you get a bachelor's in computer science, you're still going to need projects outside of class. You're still going to need like open source work or internships or things like that. Uh, and so a lot of the foundational skills might be similar, but you still need to be able to show that you actually know how to build software. Um, I think boot camps are great though. Like I don't think it's a direct one-on-one replacement for going to college. I think there's a lot of other benefits you get out of going to college that you don't get from a boot camp. But if you're doing like a career shift or you're trying to like add this skill set to something else that you already have, I think boot camps are a really like strong way of doing that. And it's like some people need a more structured learning environment. Some people can do it on their own. Teach their own.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that.
A lot of questions in chat. I like the engagement here.
Someone's asking, any advice on maintaining network/professional relationships in a digital world?
Yeah, it's definitely harder. Uh, I think that part of why conferences are having such a resurgence right now is because people are kind of like desperate for like human connection a little bit. Um, Personally, like I prefer having like a quick phone call with someone rather than having a Zoom call a lot of the time to just like catch up and see what people are up to. I find it to be a little more casual, but you just have to reach out, right? Like people are open, people are available to talk, people are available to support each other, whether it's for something really specific, like, hey, can you refer me to this job or give me feedback on my resume, or just for like, hey, like, how are you doing? What are you up to these days? You just have to like, someone has to make the first move and kind of reach out there um, and establish communication. Like, it's definitely harder now, but it's not, you know, impossible.
Yeah, something I'd append to that is just that consistency is important. Just being sure to reach out to people consistently. So
Yeah.
it's not like you're just reaching out to them when you need something. It's like, you care about like how they're doing. And for me, like I find keeping track of a bunch of different things pretty hard. So I like to schedule time, you know, for like when I'm gonna reach out to people, whether they're like professional connections or otherwise.
Yeah, 100%.
See, someone else asked, they want to get involved in open source communities. Do you have any ideas for a way to get a job in an open source um, field?
Yeah, I mean, open source by definition is open, so that's cool. Um, you know, a lot of projects now on GitHub or GitLab have what they call good first issues. I'll put this here, good first issues, um, which means that if you go to the project and look at the list of issues they have open, like feature requests or bug fixes, a lot of times the maintainers have tagged things as a good place for newcomers to start. Um, and they're often way more open to giving feedback on those types of issues than more complex ones. And so that's definitely the first place I would start is like find a project you're interested in and see what issues they have open that you could contribute to. Beyond that, you can do more structured programs like the MLH Fellowship. And then additionally, there are some bigger community events like Hacktoberfest coming up in September, October that basically like organize a ton of good first issues and newbie friendly open source, workshops and stuff to get a lot of people started all at once. So there's a lot of different methods there, but really just got to like find a project you think is cool and figure out how you want to help.
Nice. I think I definitely agree with that. Looks like we're coming up on time here. So I guess one question I just wanted to end things up on is outside of work and I guess tech culture, what have you been up to? Have you done anything interesting?
Um, but probably the most interesting non-tech thing I've done in the last couple of years is I love to bake, and I actually competed on Bake Off. So if any of you watch like Great British Bake Off with like Paul Hollywood and Prue and all of them, I competed on the American version of that. So yeah, it was pretty cool, pretty unique experience. If you want to watch it, it's on the Roku channel, so you can stream it for free.
Someone just said, "Oh, that's why I recognize you."
Yeah, hey, I still think more people probably recognize me from MLH than from baking, but you never know.
Yeah, I think it's just cool that might start to happen. Cool.
I feel like the show was the baking equivalent of a hackathon.
Nice. All right. Well, we've come up on time for the Q&A. Thanks, John, for being so open and answering everyone's questions. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been really fun.
absolutely. Thanks, Zane. I appreciate you moderating this, and thank you everyone for all of the engagement and questions in chat. I'm John Mark Go on basically every social platform that exists, so feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, have a great rest of your day.
Happy hacking.
Happy hacking.